going on, everybody? Happy Thirsty Thursday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets presented by So Rare, live here on our FTN Network YouTube page, also on Game Plus Network. You're listening on iTunes and Spotify. We do really appreciate the support on this show. Lutess in the house. That's right. It is a Thirsty Thursday here today. A lot of fantasy football talk, especially at the wide receiver position. I did a little bit of an update in my rankings over at ftnfantasy.com. For the most part, there really hasn't been a lot of change. We will talk about some players that are moving up draft boards at the wide receiver position. We're going to take a look at rankings and tiers. We're going pretty deep on today's show. Maybe tomorrow we'll finish it up, and we'll finish like the last 30 or so to give you a top 80 basically at the wide receiver position. So we'll dig super deep, maybe towards the end of this show or tomorrow. But we got 8 tiers here to present with you guys today. We'll talk through some sleepers and some busts. And again, players that are moving up draft boards like Sky Moore. Sky Moore, we talked about it yesterday with Jake Seeley and All in Football. I want to keep tabs because Sky Moore just, I don't know, a week ago, before the Kadarius Toney news, was going 50 picks after Kadarius Toney, who was roughly wide receiver 36, 37 over at underdogfantasy.com. And Sky Moore we've been doing drafts on this show where we've been taking Sky Moore in the 70s at the wide receiver position. No joke. And he is going to be one of the biggest risers. I can already feel it. Starting to get a little bit of buzz at camp. A lot of people are talking about him on Twitter. He's going to creep up. I almost think that these two are going to flip-flop, where Sky Moore is going to be in the high 30s, early 40s, where maybe that's too early. I still like him. He's one of my favorite targets in fantasy football drafts, but I still believe there's going to be some inconsistency with some of these wide receivers in Kansas City. But Rashee Rice, Sky Moore, Richie James in super deep leagues, these are guys that are certainly on my radar, not so much Kadarius Toney. And now with the injury, I don't want to say that they're making the wrong call, but I did chuckle when I saw Kadarius Toney go roughly like pick 70 or so over the past few weeks, and now uncertain if he's going to be ready to go week 1 of the NFL season, which, by the way, the Chiefs, of course, the Super Bowl champs, are opening up at home against the Detroit Lions. Lutesta here, 114 drafts. 14% Sky, 1% Toney. Love it. I'm there with you. I think I took one Toney just in case, because when he's on the field, it's appealing, and it's Andy Reid, it's Mahomes, it's the offense. I understand why people get super excited, but even on this show, when the Chiefs bought Kadarius Toney, we said immediately in redraft to sell high, and dynasty leagues to sell high as well. And unfortunately for Kadarius, he wasn't able to stay on the field. Man, when he stays, he's an electric player, and I'm certainly rooting for him, but he has just not shown us yet to date that he can stay on the football field. When he is on the field, great stuff, right? Even last year, like with Kansas City, there's a couple carries he had that he took to the house in the Super Bowl, right? There was a touchdown for him. And Sky Moore, there's a very similar play, just the opposite side of the field. Both guys, nice looking players when they're on the field, but I just, at this point, have a little bit more interest in Sky Moore. So we'll get to that in a little bit. We'll have some MLB picks towards the end of the show. Not a lot happening here today in Major League Baseball. I believe there's 5 games. The Halos play twice there in the news. We'll talk about them in the next block. They made a trade yesterday. They announced that they're not going to trade Ohtani. So it's obviously there's a lot happening. Major League Baseball, the trade deadline is the end of the month. So that's the first domino to fall. Lucas Giolito. We'll get into that stuff and what it means for the Halos in a little bit. But if you're watching live, I like the Shohei Ohtani prop at over 7.5 strikeouts. And we will have 2 more pitching props towards the end of the show for the late night crew over at Game Plus Network. But we really will dive into the wide receiver stuff. We have Perks. Let's see. Can we get that right? Cap. I butcher everything. My apologies here. I am excited about the wide receivers in Jacksonville. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. I think that the Jags can go toe-to-toe with any team in the NFL offensively, including all of the powerhouse squads in the AFC conference. I absolutely love what Jacksonville has going on offensively. And Trevor Lawrence in year 2, first with Doug Peterson, we saw some great things from T-Law. Now they add a guy in Calvin Ridley who's hasn't played a lot of football over the past couple of years, suspended all of last season. Only 5 games, I think, a couple years ago, but not far removed from a 1,400-yard season, double-digit touchdowns. He is a massive upgrade, and he is a true alpha wide receiver. You're adding him to the breakout season that Christian Kirk had, 1,000 yards, and a really good campaign from him and Evan Ingram, who they re-upped and paid for a 3-year contract. And they also have Zay Jones, who's pretty underrated as well. Just checked in under 1,000 yards himself. So they have a lot of really nice pieces. I'm excited for Travis Etienne. I like Tank Bigsby as a potential goal line back and short yardage back. And not going to see a lot of stacked boxes when you have a lot of those weapons across the field. Yeah, Jacksonville's got it going on. And they got high expectations too, right? I know their win total was 10.5. I think it's bumped down to 9.5 when we previewed the AFC South over at Set Bet Spike, a show that you can catch on our FTN Network YouTube page and Game Plus as well. We've rattled too long. Quick little baseball segment. I know some people probably here for some wide receiver talk. We'll get through the baseball segment in the next block. And before we actually get going, two things. The pre-sale for the Almanac 2023 version from our guy Aaron Schatz is over in like a day or two. So $29.99 if you want to pre-order. You see the comments there from Bill Simmons, a book that any self-respecting NFL fan needs to purchase. How about this quote here from Peter King of NBC Sports? Oh, baby. Surprising in many cases, an absolute must read if you like the NFL. We had Aaron on the FTN Fantasy show on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio over the weekend, last weekend. We'll try to get him on this show. I really loved my conversations with him. I mean, he's super sharp. He's the founder of Football Outsiders. He's the creator of DVOA, all kinds of great metrics and fantasy football analysis, 500 plus player profiles, projections. It's all there for you. We talked about some surprise teams in a good way, in a bad way. He talked up Atlanta. He talked up Cleveland. He was a little sour on Minnesota. Gave Dallas a really good grade. I can't wait to read and see all the goodness in this year's version of the 2023 Almanac. So the presale, like I said, $29.99 at the moment. Check out ftnfantasy.com for the latest. Are you buying into the topless Debo picks? I did not see the topless Debo picks. I don't need to see them. I am not buying into Debo this year. And it's not because he hates the Philly nation. It is not anything. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Man, this is just the season, isn't it? For the topless ripped, it's usually quad season, right? We always see these pictures of running backs with the crazy quads. We should have some quad rankings on this show. We'll break. We'll be back in a couple. A little baseball talk. We'll get into those wide receiver rankings and tiers here on Mean Streets. Don't go anywhere.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB. Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
Yeah, not gonna lie, Lou. Debo looking nice. He's looking in shape. He says he's in the best shape of his life. It's just something that you normally hear at this time of the year from most athletes. Yeah, it's something that you want to hear, right? You don't want to hear that they're in the worst shape, right? You don't want to hear like the Dallas Mavericks are telling Luka Doncic, "You got to lose some weight, dude. We'd like you to shred some weight here. Best shape of my life season." This is what it's all about. Best shape of my life season. quad season. Everybody's fantastic. Nobody can be caught. You can't guard anybody. Everyone's still in shorts and no pads, but that's it. You can't be stopped. I tell you what, Garrett Wilson continues to rise up draft boards. This guy looks legit. Every time I pop on social media or turn on NFL Network, I'm just messing around late at night, flicking through the channels. It's like Garrett Wilson, highlight reel catch. Garrett Wilson, burning Sauce Gardner. Nah, I don't think we've seen a whole lot of that. But Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, it might be a really, really good connection. I feel like people are here for the football, and let's wait. Let's bring up the MLB trade from yesterday. And the Angels announced that Shohei Ohtani, they just pulled him off the trade block, which I want to say is surprising. But if you've been following the show all year, I've kind of told you guys this. Like, yes, the Halos really probably should trade Shohei Ohtani because the organization has done nothing over the last 10 years. They're going to lose arguably the best baseball player of all time for nothing, a comp pick. Great. But they are clearly going in. They are buyers when a lot of people think that they should be sellers. They acquired Lucas Giolito and Ronaldo Lopez from the White Sox late last night here, according to Jeff Passan, for two prospects. They're number 2 and number 3 prospects in the organization. Neither guy a top 100 prospect, and neither guy really lighting it up. Kyle Busch is a pitcher that's really struggled so far this year. Edgar Cuero is a catching prospect, and Logan O'Hoppe is a catching prospect the Halos already have top 30 in MLB's top 100 prospects, and really was off to a good start this year before the injury, and they traded Brennan Marsh for him last year straight up. And I thought it was a decent move, but the Halos are clearly all in. If you didn't think that they're all in and they were going to trade Ohtani, I mean, that's completely out the door now, whether you agree with it or not. I have a couple takeaways. I mean, I've said this again, like all year long, that I felt like this team probably needed to trade Ohtani, get some pitching prospects. And then there were some reports a couple of days ago that no teams are really willing to give up prospects. They all feel like Ohtani, if they want him, they're going to try to get him in the winter, and you're going to have to pay north of 500 million, maybe 600 plus million for this guy. But I just look at these big name players have been traded, like usually 2 or 3 pitching prospects, 2 or 3 hitting prospects. So because he does both, how many can you get? And I'm sure you're not going to win a trade. If you deal Ohtani, you're not going to win that trade, but you're going to get something for him. The Halos have been in a tough spot all year when it comes to him. What do? Like, you want to be competitive. You want to try to show him that you want to win to keep him around. And I think they're doing that. And I'm sure he feels pretty decent today about the fact that they are getting Lucas Giolito, who's going to make his debut tomorrow in Toronto against the Blue Jays in what is a big series for both squads. The Halos just 4 games back. They're starting to win some games. They got the doubleheader today. So it's very interesting. Art Moreno is a guy that I feel like he should have moved on and sold the team. Now they're above the threshold, the luxury tax. So I would imagine a couple more moves could be made. So it's just so tough. What do you do, right? I mean, the Red Sox, when they traded Babe Ruth, I mean, did they ever regret that and watch them win all the championships in New York? I feel like they're not going to make the playoffs. I feel like they're just going to miss out. They're going to shed the prospects that they have to try to make a chance to try to make a run here to make the playoffs. And if they don't make the playoffs, Ohtani is most likely out the door, up the freeway to play for the Dodgers. And then it will just be a bloody mess in Anaheim, which it already is anyways. A lot of people take shots of them as well. They are, if you're looking for a long shot, they're 7-1 to make the playoffs. They're 125-1 to win the World Series. Now, I don't think that they are a World Series contending team, but we'll see what they do here in the next couple of days. Quan, do you have the rest of the futures that were available via DraftKings, the MLB trade deadline futures? If you do, chuck them up. If not, I can just read them off. There's some arms that are still available. Marcus Stroman, Justin Verlander, Rich Hill, which is nothing crazy to write home about. Blake Snell. I'm looking at them here. Jordan Montgomery. All the teams, Edward Rodriguez, all the teams that are favored to land these, like it's Houston or San Fran or Texas. So you have to feel like the Astros and the Rangers are also going to be teams that are buying here over the next couple of days. So 7-1 for the Halos to make it, 125-1 for them to make the World Series, and a minus 1,000 for all of us to laugh at them when Ohtani walks and the Halos miss it. One thing I will say again is that he never ever said he wanted to leave. He's never said that he wanted to stay, but he's never said he wanted to leave. He just said he wanted to win. And I think the Halos are showing him that they want to win as well. They did a lot in the offseason. When guys like Drury and Gio went down, they picked up smaller pieces like Escobar and Moustakas. Trout is a couple weeks away, so we will see what happens. But out of all the teams here, the Angels, the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, the Yankees, and Seattle, realistically, only one of those teams are going to make the playoffs, because you got to feel like Houston is in, Baltimore's in, Tampa's in, Texas is in, and then whoever wins the AL Central is in. So we'll see. Are Boston, are they going to be big time sellers here, or buyers here rather? We may see them be. What is this? On the move. There is no point or merit to this board other than to shout out Mike Omelon. That's jokes. George and Omi must have got together here. That's why Mike was asking me all kinds of random questions about my guy George and his love for the Red Sox and his beautiful graphics. Tristan Cassis, Duran and Cassis and Duvall. And the Red Sox are feeling it at the moment. They are the hottest team going in baseball right now. Their offense is certainly legit. There's no question about that. Masataka Yoshida, Devers, it's they got a lot going on offensively. Man, a lot of lefty bats that really just beat up on some righties as well. I'm still not sold about their pitching, but it does sound like Chris Sale or Tanner Hierarch will be back in a little bit. Jokes. Oh baby, Omelon. Yeah, thank you for that. Should have known that was coming when you mentioned last night. All right, enough of that. Enough of the baseball talk. Enough of the Red Sox talk here for now. If I were to pick actually a team to get in, I think it may be the Red Sox, just because of the offense, because the Jays have been inconsistent. I feel like the staff is better in Toronto, but it's been very inconsistent this year. Barrios has been up and down. Alek Manoah hasn't been great. Gossman's been a beast. Bassett has just been okay. And the offense has kind of just sputtered. There's been moments from certain players. Brandon Belt's starting to get going, but the Red Sox lineup is certainly cooking. And if they can grab an arm like a Marcus Stroman or a Verlander, or I don't know if Blake Snell's on the move, but if they can grab a top tier pitcher, right? The Yankees aren't chucking very well either. And Seattle's not scoring very well. They got some chucking, but they don't have the hitting. I'm here for it. I'm here for the excitement, the drama, and I want to see some more madness throughout the rest of the week. MLB trade deadline creeping up. All right, take a quick break. You guys are here for the football talk. We'll get into the wide receivers. We got all kinds of rankings and tiers. We'll talk sleepers, busts. We'll get into some questions. I do see the Jordan Addison question there. We'll dive into that in a little bit as well. Keep her locked. A lot more to get to here on Game Plus Network.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking Dynasty to the next level.
Back in Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. You're hanging out with us. Smash the like button. You have any comments, any questions, leave them there. We will get into wide receivers here. It's going to be a heavy wide receiver show. We'll probably wrap up tomorrow with some deep targets. And then we'll do the same thing at running back, quarterback, and the tight end position. We've done this. I think we did it about a month ago, but wanted to brush up just a little bit, hit on some news. And I thought we saw another breaking MLB trade, but fake news on the X machine. Now let's bring it up, Quan. We'll do tier 1, 2, and 3 at the wide receiver position. I believe this is the top 14 wide receivers here. Not breaking any news. I mean, there may be a couple adjustments if you look at other rankings. We'll show you a little bit of a sneak peek of our top 15 or so projections here in a little bit as well. But again, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill. We did a draft last week here on the show where Jamar Chase went number 1 overall. It's JJ for me. It was JJ and Kupp for me last year in their own tier. And it was actually Kupp who finished first in fantasy points per game and a half points, hitting 18.2, but he was limited to 9 games last season. But even, just 2 years removed from that epic season, I don't think he's going to have that type of season. But as long as he's healthy, Matthew Stafford is upright, Sean McVay is calling the plays, they bolster the offensive line. I believe he is in this tier. And, for Jamar Chase, he's not going to get the same type of volume or catches as Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp, but it's hard to ignore a guy that, touchdowns are hard to predict, but he's got the second most in the NFL since he's entered. He's got 22 in 29 games. And last year with 87 catches and 134 targets and just over 1,000 yards and 9 scores, he did that in 12 games. His rookie season played 17 games, had 6 fewer catches, had 8 fewer targets, had more yards, had more touchdowns. But again, he played 5 more games. So he was on pace to shatter those numbers that he had as a rookie. Again, he's not going to get the same type of volume. In terms of targets, you got a guy in Justin Jefferson at 184 last year. You got Tyreek Hill at 170. I would say Jamar Chase, we'll show it in a second, projections. Jamar Chase for me probably lives in the $150 range in terms of targets, maybe a $160 or so. I think more volume for JJ. And Tyreek Hill proved to me that he belongs in this tier, right? Again, you look at fantasy points per game, 16.9, JJ at 17.9, and Cooper Kupp at 18.2, Jamar Chase at 16.6. But Tyreek Hill, his first season away from Patrick Mahomes, he proved that he's quarterback proof, right? It was Tua. It was great when it was Tua. It was Skylar Thompson at times. It was Teddy Bridgewater at times. So to move away from Patrick Mahomes, we learned a lot. Patrick Mahomes, of course, we figured he would be fine without Tyreek Hill and Andy Reid calling the plays, and he was just fine. He won the MVP, Super Bowl MVP. But Tyreek Hill proved to me that, you can trust this guy. You can trust him. He's going to be a big part of the offense. There's not a wide receiver 3 on the team, right? There's not a tight end that you can get excited about on the squad. It's Waddle and it's Tyreek Hill. And it's multiple backs. We'll see if Dalvin Cook is included in those backs. So that's the first tier. Again, not breaking any news. Second tier here, in any order, really, Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Garrett Wilson. All of these guys, to me, are all in the same tier. I have shares of all of them. Best ball drafts we've done here. We did a mock draft where we got Devontae Adams pretty late. These guys are wide receivers that you can get most likely after pick 7. I'd say those first 4 wide receivers off the board on the left, CMC, Eckler, and Travis Kelce, on average, those would be the first 7 picks of the first round. Then you can make your choice. Easy pass for me on Bijan Robinson. I like to get myself an alpha wide receiver. I would take Nick Chubb ahead of Bijan Robinson. But Stephon Diggs here, who did finish 6th in fantasy points per game, 4th overall. And they didn't bring in another wide receiver. Yes, they drafted Dalton Kincaid, but there's also another tight end on the squad. Stephon Diggs is the alpha, the go-to number 1 option for Josh Allen. I would have liked to see Buffalo get another wide receiver too that they can trust a little bit more and give more volume than they did to Gabe Davis last season, just to have what I noticed. And Adam Pfeiffer is a big Bills fan, Bills Mafia shout out. I always felt like Diggs was just doubled in games in the second half, kind of disappeared in the fourth quarter of certain games. I just would have liked to see them, somewhat opposite. If Hopkins went to Buffalo, yes, it would hurt Stephon Diggs, where maybe you would have to bump him down a couple of spots, but it would just be overall great. And I think the last missing piece to the Bills offensively, but Diggs is in there. I got CeeDee Lamb ahead of A.J. Brown purely based on volume alone. CeeDee Lamb last season, 156 targets, A.J. Brown, 146 targets. But you got to remember, CeeDee Lamb played a bunch of games with Cooper Rush. Dak missed some time. Overall, CeeDee Lamb's going to have more catches than A.J. Brown. He's going to have more targets, 107 catches for him last year. But A.J. Brown is that big play guy, right? A.J. Brown, 17 yards per catch. And you have CeeDee Lamb, 12 yards per catch. More touchdowns potentially for AJ. They probably live in around the 10 to 11 mark. I think that there is a slightly higher ceiling for AJ because of the explosiveness after the catch, because of how he's used in the offense. But there is something to be said about volume. So for projecting targets, I project a little bit more for Diggs, a little bit more for Lamb, probably a little bit more for Adams as well, but I'm not crazy about the quarterback play, bringing in Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow. Is he going to be gone from the squad? Michael Mayer. Like there's a lot going on there. I know they want to run the ball in Las Vegas, but the secondary, I know they've done some things where it seems like, they'll be competitive in the secondary. Marcus Peters is going to have his hands full in the division in the conference. The secondary is very bad. It does lead to more pass attempts. Devontae Adams is probably the biggest steal on that board when we look at the top two tiers, because people are out on this guy. He had such a great season last year. He was right there. I mean, I'm kind of disrespecting him a little bit. I feel like the fantasy community may be as well. The fact that he had 180 targets, 100 grabs, 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, was great with Carr, had a great game when it was Stidham. He's the best wide receiver in football. I fully believe that. I think he is the best real life wide receiver in football. The separation that he has, the hands that he has, the mismatch. He's an absolute freak of nature. And, Jacoby Myers plays a lot in the slot too. Like Adams and Myers are both guys that have played a lot in the slot. And I think they'll both have some really nice moments. Of course, Adams has the higher ceiling here. And if you are drafting in the middle part of your draft and you do like to take a running back, like maybe you want to roll the dice on Bijan, that's for you. But if you wanted to go Chubb or Taylor or Saquon, then you can get a guy like Adams with that second pick to be your alpha wide receiver one. The volume is still going to be there. Jimmy G, man, he's a winner. He wins football games, but I'm just not crazy about Jimmy G. I just feel like it limits the maximum upside of his other wide receivers. And of course, Josh McHale's not the same kind of play caller that Kyle Shanahan is as well. But we'll see what does happen. Clearly going to be familiar with the system quarterback in there, right? Again, Devontae Adams, 16.8 fantasy points per game, right there with Tyreek Hill last year, 16.9. As for other guys on this list, Garrett Wilson has really jumped up. I mean, he is looking at Underdog right now as wide receiver 8. I would not be shocked if he leapfrogged Brown, Lamb, or Diggs. The hype is certainly legit. I said in the opening block that he is making highlight reel catch after highlight reel catch after highlight reel catch. But I am still leaning Amon-Ra St. Brown over him. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 146 targets last season, was inside the top 10. He had 1,100 yards. He was stopped inside the 5 several times. There's no Jameson Williams on this squad for the first 6 weeks. TJ Hawkinson is not there. They got a rookie tight end and Sam Laporta that I like. But again, he is a rookie tight end. Marvin Jones is a fossil at this point of his career. Amon-Ra St. Brown is an unbelievable player. The one thing I will say about Amon-Ra here compared to these other guys, even though I did see him get stopped inside the 5 quite often, is he doesn't have the same sort of touchdown upside. He's not used deep down the field like some of these other players, the high ADOT, the explosiveness. He has great games. He had great games last year. He's going to have great games this year. He's going to improve as a player. I think he's a rock solid wide receiver 1. But I view his games like, he has more like 8 for 100. That's great. PPR, big boost, I think, in PPR. But just the fact that, and again, touchdowns are hard to predict, but 6. All these other guys that we saw near the board, I mean, these guys are, JJ only had 8, but these other guys like have 14 touchdown upside, but there's nothing wrong with him. As for Garrett Wilson, I love him. I think he's great. I have shares. I want to have shares. I want to leave my drafts with Garrett Wilson. 147 targets last year, 1,100 yards. I mean, he played with brutal quarterbacks last year. Let's be honest. Mike White was a nice story at times, right? Zach Wilson, not so much. Joe Flacco. I went to a Jets game last season in Cincy where Joe Flacco was the quarterback. Yeah, it was great that all he wanted to do was target Garrett Wilson, but let's be honest, right? This is a massive upgrade. Even Aaron Rodgers coming off one of his worst seasons in the NFL, a first ballot Hall of Famer. He seems motivated. He's on the field with these players and building a rapport with them, which is something he just hasn't done. I'm not going to give as much pushback on Alan Lazard as Jake. Seeley's really worried that Lazard's going to be a big factor in this offense. He talked about how a couple years ago he led the team in red zone targets, and that was when Devontae Adams was on the squad. Lazard has been, Rodgers went over there and brought all his boys, like Cobb, come on over. It's like Adam Sandler in the movies, come on over. Nathaniel Hackett, how about the Sean Payton comment today? At what was arguably one of the worst offenses ever run in the history. And he's not wrong. Nathaniel Hackett, we've been all over Hackett on this show several times, right? He talked about the pre-snap motion on both sides. The Denver offense is going to look much better this season, but we're not drafting Cortland Sutton early. Let's bring that up one more time. Do we hit on everybody in those first two tiers? And then this last tier here for me is really tough not to include Amari Cooper and Metcalf, because Amari Cooper, especially, very similar numbers as these other guys. These four, or three of the four in Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and T. Higgins are basically 1B. But these guys have proved that they can be wide receiver ones. Waddle, 7th in receptions, explosive offense, guys in motion, right? Tua's question for sure, but we just talked about there's 2 wide receivers in Miami, and they're both ballers. As for Devontae Smith, 8th in receptions, 95 grabs, more volume down the stretch, a lot more volume, was used more inside the red zone as well. No wide receiver 3 to consider in Philadelphia. They do have a tight end in Dallas Goedert, but Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown with Jalen Hurts. The schedule is tougher. I get it. Yada, yada, yada. Maybe because the schedule is tougher, they'll face some adversity and they'll have to throw the football in the second half of games this year instead of running the clock. So I still think he belongs in that tier. Same with T. Higgins. And if you look at T. Higgins and you look at Devontae Smith, Smith is a guy that gets more volume than T. Higgins. T. Higgins is great. Love him. He's right there with those guys. 1B on the squad. Chase, 1A, 1B. But I got Smith ahead of him a touch. And then there's Olave on that list. Olave is that guy that could be the alpha on the squad. Michael Thomas has played 10 of the Saints' last 50 games over the last 3 years. I'm rooting for Michael Thomas. I'd love to see him on the field. It'd be good for Carr, it'd be good for the Saints. They're favorites to win the division. I think that they do win the division. I think this offense will be good. I think they're going to make the playoffs easily. If they get 9 wins, they're going to make the playoffs. They got a good defense, good offensive line, 3 running backs there too, and Alvin Kamara, who may not miss a lot of time, right? Chris Olave, the only wide receiver inside the top 10 in ADOT and air yards last season. And I'm talking guys that had at least 50 targets. And you see the ADOT here, minimum 50 targets, free tool over at ftnfantasy.com, air yards and ADOT. It's a cool stat. I like to look at it, especially in season, DFS plays. You're looking for some guys that, some of these guys are boom or bust. Like Gabe Davis is boom or bust, right? He gets 4 or 5 targets a game. He drops a couple of them, but he gets targeted down the field. It's explosive plays. DJ Chark, George Pickens, Chris Olave, Jahan Dotson. MVS has always been on this list, right? Explosive, big plays. He always gets a shot or two deep down the field. Christian Watson, very interesting to be on this list. We saw him used differently in the second half of the season when he was playing. He played 80% of the snaps over the last 7 weeks of the season. And he was actually wide receiver 4 in fantasy points per game. Only Adams, Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb had more fantasy points than Christian Watson from week 10 to week 18. And he was 7th overall in fantasy points per game. He was used in different ways. I'm really excited about him. But for Chris Olave, he's a bit of a smaller back. I mean, he's kind of like Devontae. I think they're 6 foot, right even on that number. I don't know how much he'll be used in the red zone. They brought in Jimmy Graham. They got a bunch of tight ends there now. They got a couple backs. Jamal Williams led the NFL in rushing touchdowns last year. He led the NFL in goal line carries, rushing attempts. Like, he's a good goal line back. And then if Michael Thomas can stay healthy, he'll be a red zone option as well. We gave the over 4.5 touchdowns for Chris Olave. It's now 5.5 over at DraftKings. I think it's juiced a touch still at 4.5 over at Caesars. I think he was right on 4 last year. This is an upgrade at the quarterback position. Andy Dalton, trade him in for Derek Carr. It is really an upgrade. I know a lot of people on the show were hard on Derek Carr. They were talking about how, he's not accurate at all. Last year, I believe, was an outlier. And he's somewhere in between 2 years ago and last year. Maybe not as good as 2 years ago and maybe not as bad as last year. But if you look overall at his statistics, this is a guy that has been, near the top every single year in completion percentage. He can throw a deep ball. And one thing I like about Chris Olave, he did face some top coverage last year, right? He had to be the alpha wide receiver inside that offense when Michael Thomas went down. He only played a couple games. So he did learn, just like Devontae Smith in his rookie season. He got a lot of attention. You'd like to see Michael Thomas actually stay on the field, because I do believe that will be good for Chris Olave. A lot of people think, it's like Treylon Burks and Okonkwo. Oh, well, those guys are just no good anymore because, DeAndre Hopkins is on the squad. I see that. The volume is going to come down. Burks is a big loser. Okonkwo I still like, but having Thomas on the field is good for everybody in this offense. Score more points, take attention off of Chris Olave. Now, maybe not as many doubles or, bracketing him and things like that. So I think it would be great if Thomas can stay healthy. Olave is a target. Love all those guys. Can we bring this up one more time, Quan? I don't think there's a bad pick on this board when it comes to wide receivers. I don't view any of these guys as busts. I think they're all studs. Majority of these guys are in really good up-tempo offenses with really good quarterbacks as well. I don't think you can go wrong with any of these wide receivers, tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. And for me, I like to go wide receiver, wide receiver. I like to go wide receiver, Nick Chubb, wide receiver, wide receiver. We've done a lot of zero RB, hero RB drafts here. There are a lot of good running backs available to you in the later rounds. Rashad White, Cam Akers, Javonte Williams. There's a lot of decent running backs out there that can help you. Jerick McKinnon's another one in a full-point PPR league. He's going to have some spike weeks for you as well, 9 receiving touchdowns. Get yourself a couple of these wide receivers if you can. And if you start at the first part of your draft where you go Jefferson, Chase, Kupp, or Hill, you will be able to, at the end of the second, potentially get a Derrick Henry, a Ramondre Stevenson, a Breece Hall. Hopefully Cook doesn't sign there. I am worried a little bit about Breece Hall and Ramondre. And then you can get one in that tier 3, a Waddle, a Devontae, a Higgins, or an Olave. And I think that's a really good start to your draft, and you're on your way. I see some questions. We'll break for now, and we'll get into some of those questions here on the other side. We'll be back in a couple. Hang tight.
The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking Dynasty to the next level. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking Dynasty to the next level.
Yo, Quan, can you show the projections? Do you have our wide receiver projections from FTM Fantasy? Thank you, sir. So these are our projections to give you guys a little bit of a look here. I believe this is a half-point setting. So we got JJ 1, Chase 2, Kupp 3, Hill 4, CeeDee Lamb 5, Diggs 6, AJ 7, Amon-Ra ahead of Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, and Devontae Smith in there. And you can see the targets. You can see the fantasy points. We got 169 there for Justin Jefferson, 163 for Cooper Kupp. We got 152 for CeeDee. So you see the gap, a $127, pretty conservative here from Mr. Jeff Ratcliffe on AJ Brown, but Stephon Diggs at a $139. Amon-Ra I'd have for a few more, but yeah, 132 here, over 1,000 yards. All these guys, right? Over 1,000 yards. But again, you see the tier in the first tier there, these guys that are flirting with 1,500 yards. JJ there, the high touchdown upside from A.J. Brown, from Tyreek Hill, from Chase, and from Cooper Kupp 6.1. Oh my goodness, it's a touch low. Garrett Wilson touchdown upside here at 8, right? I mean, 1,000 yards from Garrett Wilson last year. I agree with you, Lou. Like, The comment here that you had was 50%, right? 50% A-Rod. It's like 100% better than Flacco. Yeah, absolutely. Mike Omelon in the house. Great points means Carr was 5th in the NFL in deep balls last season in a down year. Wheels up for Olave. I like that. Yeah, great call there. Wide receiver, Kenneth Walker, and then get Sharps a little bit later. I don't like to handcuff my own backs personally. I just feel like it's a wasted roster spot. I mean, both of those guys could eat. It could really be a committee in Seattle, but I'd like to handcuff other guys running backs because that handcuff's just going to be on your bench forever. Right? It's just wasting away when there's an injury. Who's that first player you're going to cut? That guy. Then an injury happens, like, oh, I could have had it. But I like handcuffing other people's running backs, and then you don't have to beat everybody to the waiver wire. You got a guy and you maximize your upside. I need to see where Calvin Ridley lands in your tier list. Well, let's get after it. Quan, let us see tier 4. It's a big one. I like Calvin Ridley. I maybe don't have him aggressively ranked like other people. I see other people, top 10 wide receiver, top 12 wide receiver. Baked into having him here at 20 is the fact that he hasn't played in a little bit, and there's a lot going on there. I mentioned earlier, you have Christian Kirk, you have Zay Jones, you have Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne's going to catch balls out of the backfield. I think this is a fair ranking. I am aggressive on Christian Watson. I have him ranked higher than anybody at ftnfantasy.com. I'll eat it again this year. If it doesn't work out for me, we won a lot of consolation brackets with Christian Watson on the squad last year. But as for Amari Cooper, it's really close for me to be in that tier 3. A top 10 wideout last season, his 6th 1,000-yard season. He went from 1.65 yards per route run in his final season with Dallas to 2.06 in his first season with the Browns. He was targeted down the field more. He had a higher ADOT. He was 3rd in end zone targets. He had a career-high 9 touchdowns and 132 targets. And, a majority of his good games actually came with Jacoby Brissett under center, but Deshaun Watson was pretty rusty. I think that this is going to be a really good connection this year. Amari Cooper is underrated. Last year, he was going wide receiver 40-ish, right? And he finished as a top 10 guy. DK Metcalf is in there, and Tyler Lockett's in the same tier for me. I don't understand why we do this every single year. Tyler Lockett has had more fantasy points per game over the last 2 years than DK Metcalf. Neither guy missed a beat without Russell Wilson. They actually improved a little bit, right? The deep ball passing from Geno Smith was great. He led the NFL in completion percentage. Yes, they brought in Jackson Smith at Jigba. I think you got to bump these guys down just a touch, but I'm sick of the disrespect for Tyler Lockett. DK's got a higher ceiling, right? He does. He's got, I think, maybe a touch higher in terms of touchdowns. He's going to get more targets. He's a big body that can go up and get it. But Tyler Lockett's more of a finesse route runner, targeted down the field. Sometimes, sometimes you go weeks with a low A dot, and other times, he's, back-to-back games with like explosive catches deep down the field, right? Remember all those times with Russell Wilson, it's a perfect ball to Tyler Lockett. So I like both of those guys, but I just wanted to put Lockett a little bit closer to his teammate, DK Metcalf. Other guys on this list, I touched on Christian Watson in the last block. I really do believe in I understand Jordan Love. Hey, Jordan Love came in a hostile environment at the Link against the best pass defense in all football, according to DVOA outsiders, or Football Outsiders, DVOA, past DVOA. And it was a 68-yard slant to the house. Man, he's got a lot of speed. He reminds me of Mike Evans. He's a big body that's got sneaky speed, and he struggled with some drops last season, maybe some jitters there. I like him overall. I like Jaden Reed I think, in 2 years, he's the best wide receiver in Green Bay. Hopkins and Godwin, based on pure volume alone for Godwin, I feel a little bit safer with him than I do Mike Evans. Very boomer bust last year with Brady and had the 40 some odd fantasy point showing in the very last game of the season. Godwin, he's going to be involved, whether it's Trask or Baker in the slot. He's going to have a role there. Easier completions for Chris Godwin than Mike Evans. Hopkins, very small sample size last year, but was on pace for 180 targets, which would have been second behind Justin Jefferson. He's going to be the clear-cut guy there for Ryan Tannehill. Jerry Jeudy, much better offense, right? Had a good season with piss-poor play calling and still ended up with 1,000 yards. Now you got Sean Payton there. Terry McLaurin always finishes as roughly wide receiver 2022. It's just Sam Howell's the 14th quarterback in Washington since Kirk Cousins left, and I don't think he's the answer. Debo Samuel, Drake London, I'm a little bit sour on both of those guys. Drake London was much better last year when Desmond Ridder took over for Marcus Mariota, but also, there's no Kyle Pitts there at the time. So now you add Kyle Pitts. There's really no wide receiver 2. Matt Collins, Cordero Patterson, running back wide receiver. There's really no wide receiver 2 in this offense, but it is a run-first offense. They're going to run the ball like 30-plus times. I really believe that they're going to do that in Atlanta. So I don't know how much I really care about Drake London. I think he's a great player, but I think Desmond Ritter's better for the offense as well, but it's going to be a run-first offense. And then Deebo Samuel, first couple of years, 10 points, 10 points, 18, 10 points. The 18 is when they used him as a running back. They're not going to use him. They didn't use him that way when they got CMC. It's just not going to happen. Those same little end arounds. He can be in the best shape of his life. I just do not care. I love Deebo as a player. I think he's fantastic, but I am out on him. He's one of my wide receiver busts this season. We're going to dig a little bit deeper. We got a couple more tiers to share on Mean Streets. Back in a couple. On tier 5, tier 6 here. Now, again, all my rankings can be found over at FTN at fantasy.com. Ratcliffe's there, Scott Spratt, Pfeiffer, Pope, Mike Randall, projections. Jeff Ratcliffe, #1 ranker in the game. He's the guy that you really want the rankings and the tiers from, but I wanted to show you guys here. And plus, George, man, George always kills it. I mean, everything looks so nice. Tier 5, Christian Kirk, Mike Evans, Brendan Ayuk. I'm a little bit lower on Brendan Ayuk than everybody else, but it's just there's so much going on there. I like Brock Purdy. I think he's been one of the biggest steals in drafts, and now underdog. He's finally going ahead of Trey Lance. He's going to be the week 1 starter. There's no question. He's going to be the week 1 starter. But Kittle was great with Purdy, and he had 7 touchdowns in the last 4 games of the regular season. And they got Debo, they got CMC. So I don't know. I like Ayuk as a player, but I don't know if he's going to be even a solid wide receiver 3. I have him in a dynasty, and I'm actually trying to move on from him, but no bites. Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman, Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown. A lot of people have Deontay Johnson higher. No touchdowns last year. I'm sure he scores a couple. I would rather have George Pickens, who's in tier 6 for me, use deeper down the field. I think he's I think he's got better hands. I think both guys are good route runners, but George Pickens is legit. I think this guy is an absolute stud, and I think he's going to take over as the #1 option in Pittsburgh. Maybe that's a hot take. You know, Deontay's always near the top in targets. He's a good wide receiver as well. I know he struggled with drops, a few years ago. I don't know if there's enough here for everybody to be super relevant, with Kenny Pickett under center, Pat Freiermuth there. I don't think we'll see really anything from Allen Robinson. But Najee, catch a few passes as well. Pittman, more of a possession wide receiver, run first offense. It's going to be some inexperience there at the quarterback position. I really think they're going to lean on Jonathan Taylor. I don't even know if Anthony Richardson's going to start every game. I'd say he definitely gets 14 in there. Hollywood Brown, man, showed us that he reconnected with his old college teammate Kyler Murray. Those guys were great together in Oklahoma. They were great together to start last season before the injury happened, and they brought in Hopkins. I am really worried about Arizona. I think they're going to be the worst team in football. I don't think it's even going to be close. I think they're going to win 2 or 3 games. I think they're going to they're not going to rush Kyler back. There's no question they're not going to rush Kyler back. And then there's going to be conversations inside the organization if they start 0-6, 0-7, and Kyler hasn't played yet about Caleb Williams being the #1 overall pick for Arizona next year as well. But this team is going to be brutal, as I mentioned. Offensively, somebody's going to have to catch some passes. You saw on the board. Was it Rondell Moore on that next tier? Sneak peek at tier number 7. But he's going to get some targets, right? With no Hopkins there, the quarterback play is not going to be great to start the season. McKyler's going to play at some point. They're not going to shut him down. It may be one of those guys that just falls down draft boards, and maybe you buy low when Kyler's close to coming back. On the right there, tier 6, George Pickens, Jahan Dotson, Jordan Addison, Brennan Cooks, Gabe Davis, Cortland Sutton, Jacoby Myers, Alan Lazard, Juju Smith-Schuster, Michael Thomas, Quentin Johnson, and Sky Moore. Quentin Johnson, I think, could really fall into some targets right away. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen haven't had the clearest track record when it comes to health over the past couple of years. I love Kalen Moore coming in here. I think it's going to be good for the offense, and Justin Herbert taking shots down the field. Herbert got paid. Oh, baby. Juju Smith-Schuster, not a lot there in terms of a ceiling, but, a good solid floor, I'd say, in a PPR format. I think he can catch north to 70, 75 balls. It's going to be good for Mac Jones there, but I don't really want anybody in New England. Lazard, again, a number 2, Rodgers familiarity there, red zone option potentially. Cortland Sutton, I'm willing. I like to have some shares on Cortland Sutton. I have him ranked, I think, a little bit higher than most. And, last year as a 4th round pick, I still believe that he's a guy that fits well with Russell Wilson's skill set as a deep ball passer, as a guy that runs deep routes, high ADOT. I know everybody's really drinking the Jerry Jeudy Kool-Aid, and I am too. I think he's the guy to own in Denver, but Cortland Sutton is coming at a discount this year, just like Gabe Davis. Everybody drafted those guys early. Gabe Davis, they drafted as a top 24 wide receiver. He finishes as wide receiver 28. Now he's in the 40s. Nobody wants him. He's still going to probably have like a decent low-end wide receiver 3, high-end wide receiver 4 type of season is a decent flex play for you as well. Anybody else on that list that we can get to before we break and dive into the final one? Jordan Addison. There was a question about Jordan Addison. Really like the player. One of my favorites, actually. I think he's my second favorite out of the draft. Yes, I have a feeling that he's in for a huge season as well. I am buying in. I don't think he'll be the number 2 option, though. TJ Hawkinson had a lot of targets last season with Kirk Cousins. A lot of double-digit games in terms of targets from TJ Hawkinson used inside the end zone. But there's an opportunity here for a number 2 wide receiver, and I like him over KJ Osborne. A lot of attention always to Justin Jefferson, double coverage, triple coverage. Addison is a great route runner. He's explosive with the ball in his hands. I'm a fan. Can we bring up that board one more time? I'm just going to wrap it through my targets here. Let's see. Left side. Nobody really. Brown. Like Pickens, like Dotson, like Addison. Don't mind Davis if he's going to fall. Cortland Sutton I like. Could see Myers if he falls a little bit. Quentin Johnson I definitely like. And I do like Sky Moore. I was drinking the Kool-Aid with Sky Moore before all this stuff happened with Kadarius Toney. Now he's rising up draft boards. We're going to keep an eye on Sky Moore, but he was wide receiver 59 just a couple weeks ago. I bet you we're talking about him being wide receiver 30-ish or so. We got one more tier to break down. We'll do it here next. Keep her locked.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB. Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
Welcome back. One final time here. George, thanks for that comment. Yeah, chopped her all off. All the lettuce is gone here. Lou, like this trade. Chase for Higgins, Watson, Kelsey, and Dynasty. I get it. You traded a stud. It's probably hard pill to swallow. But you got three nice pieces there. If Watson pans out for you, I do all right. Cards could end up with 1 or 2 wins. I was considering the under 2.5. It's like plus 240. It's like they may fall into 1 win. Kyler comes back, maybe they have a win or 2. But let's bring up that final tier, and tomorrow we'll dig deep and the late deep round flyers and sleepers. We'll get like tier 8 or 9 here. Treylon Burks, Zay Flowers, Jackson Smith, Ajigba, Nico Collins, Rashad Bateman, Jamison Williams, Odell Beckham Jr., Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore, Tyler Boyd, Adam Thielen, Zay Jones. So yeah, I mean, Zay Jones is really good. He's an underrated wide receiver, man. He had a good season with the Raiders before he came over to Jacksonville. Just adding Calvin Ridley's tough, right? You got to feel like Marvin Jones and his 81 targets are gone, but like there's just a lot of things going on there all of a sudden. Like you got to feel like Chark or Kirk and Jones come down just a touch. And I do believe Calvin's going to be the guy there. Jalen Ramsey carted to the locker room. Oh man, don't really like to hear that stuff. It really makes me sick. Big trade for Miami, right? That secondary, one of the best ones in the NFL, I think. Hopefully he's okay. The guy I really want to focus in on here is I like Zay Flowers more than Bateman and Odell. I think that, bringing in Todd Monken, they ran 11 personnel, fewer than anybody last year in the NFL. It's going to be a new look offense. Lamar's got all these weapons. They're still going to run. Lamar's not going to run as much, but it's going to be a tough offense to defend. I said this a couple times. How do you defend? How do you help if you're a defender? Because you're going to have Andrews as a mismatch. You got the route running ability of Odell Beckham Jr. We haven't seen some time, but he's going to get some attention. You got Bateman, who's going to stretch the field. Zay Flowers is going to see a lot of one-on-one coverage. Bateman hasn't showed us that he can stay on the field. I like the young buck in Zay Flowers. He's the guy that is definitely going to impress everybody here over the next couple weeks in camp. People are going to be talking him up, and he is going to rise up draft boards. I promise you guys. Also on that list, Nico Collins. Didn't work out for me last year, but no Brennan Cooks. And when Brennan Cooks, kind of went down last year, the last 4 games for Nico Collins, 10 targets, 9 targets, 7 targets, 10 targets. That's 36 targets in 4 games. We have a massive upgrade at the quarterback position in CJ Stroud. I think he's the best quarterback from this draft, honestly. Anthony Richardson, sure. From a fantasy standpoint, dual threat, great. As a pocket passer, as a play caller, accuracy, it's CJ Stroud. And I like Nico Collins. I like John Mechie too. Both of those guys are targets of mine. And one more time, up on that list, I can't remember everybody, Quan, my apologies. Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore is slot guys. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones will have some moments. I love that Cleveland bought low on Elijah Moore. I think he's sneaky good. He's even has a dynasty buy low yourself in fantasy. Rondell Moore is going to get some targets. Where's the ceiling for Moore or Boyd? Thielen's in here. Mingo is really close. I almost included him as well. And then the other guy, Jamison Williams. Like Jamison Williams, Odell Beckham Jr., Bateman. Jamison Williams has 1 catch on the NFL resume. He's suspended for the first 6 games here of the NFL season. I think when he's playing and he's active, he's going to be good, but I think he's going to be very boom or bust. He's going to be very much like Deshaun Jackson. There's going to be some great moments for Jamison Williams, some highs and some lows. I think maybe more highs than lows. It just depends on how your draft goes. If you're drafting high upside guys, like if you're drafting a Mike Williams or Mike Evans or guys that have some injury history and some boom or bust, not high volume target guys, then maybe you want to stay clear of Jamison Williams. But if you're drafting some nice floor wide receivers early on and Jamison Williams is like maybe your 4th wide receiver, or maybe you really like the position and he's your 5th, just make sure, some context, make sure you have some solid floor guys. You can take some gambles and some risks. You can make a case for anybody in best ball, but nothing worse than losing your guy in, single format, like just your redraft format with like 12 or 10 other buddies. All right. Rambled quite a bit. We got to get it here. Kota Senga over 5.5 strikeouts. Book it against the Nats. We'll have a whole lot more tomorrow. Have a good one. Cheers.